Just recently I've added a bunch of really cool vintage toys and some Star Wars items to my collection. An eclectic bunch of stuff has turned up in the last couple of weeks and I thought it would make for a quite interesting video. So let me discuss what I've picked up in this toy haul. Stay tuned.
Come with me, toy fans.
Last weekend, my father came to visit me and it was just a week after my birthday. And recently he had watched the video that I did about the longest running toy line in the world. It was about the Britain's Toy Soldier line. And with my dad being a toy soldier collector himself, he said that he'd really enjoyed the video. And he obviously had paid very close attention because in one part of the video, I said this. In my German collection, I have both the German Dispatch Rider and the German Army combination. But I would love to add some more, such as the Kübelwagen or the Kettenkrad. So when he arrived to visit us last weekend, he had a birthday gift for me. And I'll tell you, it's been a very, very long time since my father ever bought me toys. So it was absolutely amazing to discover that he had purchased me a vintage boxed Britain's German Kettenkrad and the German Kübelwagen. These are some really, really nice pieces, and I think now the only item left that I need to complete the German range from the Britain's Detail line is the artillery piece. The Kübelwagen here, or as Britons called it, the German Scout Car, this is in a gorgeous box from 1974. I love this style of packaging. This is going to be staying in the box. I'm not going to be taking this one out. And the Kettenkrad is also in a box from the same era. This box has a little bit of damage to the corner, but it's still very, very displayable. And I really like the little price sticker on there that tells me that it was sold back in the day from a shop called P&C Simper & Son for £1.10. Dad, thank you very much, mate. I don't think you bought me a toy for my birthday since I was a child. So you made me a very, very happy man. Thanks again, mate.
Do or do not. There is no try.
The next item that I picked up, it was one of those purchases where I've kind of always wanted this toy, but I've never been kind of willing to pay the collector prices for it. It's one of those for years now. It's like if it ever popped up at a reasonable price, I would buy one of those. And that is this 12-inch magnetic Batman.
It's magnetic Batman and magnetic Robin with magnetic hands and feet.
I used to have the non-magnetic 12-inch Mego Batman in my collection. I had a boxed example, but I've always preferred this version. I think it's got a much better head sculpt. And as you can see in the display behind me, I've got a 12-inch Superman over here and a 12-inch Hulk down there. And if I was going to add a 12-inch Batman to the collection, it was going to be this magnetic version. I'm not too interested in picking up the magnetic Robin that came with this back in the day, because that figure is the same height as Batman, and I really feel as though Robin should be a bit shorter in stature. But now I might have to go out and get myself a 12-inch Spider-Man and maybe a 12-inch Wonder Woman and a 12-inch Captain America from the Mego line as well. Who knows? We'll see. My next recent purchase is an upgrade to my vintage Kenner Star Wars action figure collection, and that is Endor Leia. I already had a complete version of this figure in my collection, but it wasn't perfect. There was some paint on the bottom of her boot and a mark on her face and her hand. So when I came across this really minty example from a local seller on Facebook, I couldn't resist picking up the figure because not only was it an upgrade, but it also gave me the opportunity to use some of the accessories from the not quite so mint figure that I had in my collection before. I gave the blaster to my vintage AT-ST driver because he actually had a repro weapon, and the combat helmet was given to my Valaverse retro style Desert Rat figure. And I was inspired to do this because of that hilarious skit type of video that was produced by Retro Blasting some time back.
Add a helmet and hand him a blaster, and he's a rebel commando on Endor.
Hey Fur Nuggets, you've made me angry. Enjoy my magic. And sticking with the Star Wars theme, I want to send a massive thanks to John from Stan Solo Creations for helping me fill a few of those gaps in my Stan Solo collection. I finally got my hands on the Stan Solo Greedo. When I made my video several months back talking about the first 21 Star Wars action figures, I talked a lot about how the Cantina Alien action figures who were introduced kind of after the first 12 but within the first 21 Star Wars action figures, that I really felt as though those were rushed action figures. with very basic designs to their costumes that were not accurate to any of the movies. And this Stan Solo version of Greedo corrects all of those mistakes while sticking with that vintage Kenner Star Wars style. One of the other key pieces missing from my Stan Solo collection is Oola. And we all remember Oola. She was the sexy alien dancer in Jabba's palace at the start of Return of the Jedi that was sadly fed to the Rancor monster in one of those actions that really made us fearful of Jabba the Hutt as a main antagonist in that third part of the trilogy. And the Stan Solo Creations version of Oola, yet again, I say it with all of their figures, I'm beating a dead horse at this point, but they have just captured that Kenner aesthetic perfectly. They know how, had Kenner have made this figure back in the day, which I understand why they didn't. You know, there was probably just a little bit too much flesh showing on this female character for young boys in the early 80s. But Stan Solo have again captured that aesthetic and given us another very key character from those early scenes of Return of the Jedi that we can add to our Jabba's Palace display. Now hopefully you remember a few weeks back I hosted a live stream where I discussed the early Palitoy Star Wars playsets with my friends Michael Schaefer and Michael French of Retroblasting. And if you haven't watched that live stream, I highly encourage you to go back and watch it. I'll post a link to it at the end of this video. But during that live stream where we were discussing the differences between the really early Palitoy playsets like the Land of the Jawas and the Droid Factory and those kind of things, where a lot of the Palitoy versions had vacuum formed bases as opposed to the more injection molded components that came with the Kenner versions of those playsets. And during that live stream, Michael French of Retroblasting brought up onto camera a custom Palitoy playset that I kind of had never heard of before, made by a fan maker that goes by the name of Palitoys.
One of the Palitoy inspired custom playsets that is made in the same way that the Palitoy ones like this were made, and this is the detention center playset.
Nice.
Following that live stream, I got in touch with this fan maker, and I'm now in the possession of two of his classic Palitoy style playset kind of diorama type things. The first of which is the Death Star detention block, and these come in really nice looking boxes. Now these are not factory produced boxes, but for a custom fan maker, they are still pretty decent quality, and I love the overall aesthetic. The man behind these playsets, his name is Lee, and you can see how he's done the little play on words there with the company name of Palitoys, and kept it looking like the original Palitoy logo would have looked on the boxes back in the day. This small playset diorama has a vacuum formed base, just like those original Palitoy playsets used to have, and it depicts that sort of entrance area into the detention block of the first Death Star.
We're fine. We're all fine here now. Thank you. How are you?
With a computer control panel that your action figures can stand behind, and a doorway cutout that leads through to the tractor beam. And I really like the fact that they've added this because although the Kenner Death Star had the tractor beam area, the Palitoy playset didn't have that feature. So this is a nice little add-on that you could display near your vintage cardboard Palitoy Death Star if you're lucky enough to have one. The other Palitoys playset that I picked up is the Emperor's Throne Room from Return of the Jedi. And again, this comes in a really nice box. I love the artwork, and I prefer this playset over the Death Star detention block. Perhaps that's just because of the way my mind works. I like the fact that this is a very symmetrical display with angled walls on both sides. Now, of course, by the time of Return of the Jedi, Palitoy wasn't making variations to their playsets, and they were no longer putting out playsets with vacuum-formed bases. So the construction of this toy doesn't really fit in with what Palitoy was producing in 1983 and 1984. However, we never got an Emperor's Throne Room in either the Palitoy Star Wars range or the Kenner Star Wars range. So to be able to have a bit of a backdrop like this that you can put on your display shelf and have the Emperor there with Luke Skywalker dueling Darth Vader, it's a big miss from the original vintage line, and I'm really pleased to have this piece in my collection now. For anyone who's interested in picking up one of these Palitoy playsets, they also do a really cool one for Palitoy Action Force called the Baron's Lair. So if anyone is interested in picking these up, you'll find a link to their website in the video description below.
You are unwise to lower your defenses.
So that's it for this episode of Analog Toys, but please make sure you're subscribed to the channel because we've got some really awesome content coming up over the next few months. And the best way to ensure that you're notified is to click that notification bell down below and select all notifications. I'm Tony, and I'll see you guys in the next video.